43 years of shared mornings, quiet dinners, and carefully stitched routines collapsed in a single breath. Yet when consciousness returned to me beneath the sterile lights and humming machines of the cardiac ward, I did not feel the hot rush of tears I had imagined would come, but instead a strange, cold clarity that spread through my veins like winter air. Because in that moment, I understood that the ending I had been handed was not the ending I would accept, and that the woman who believed she had erased me from her future had unknowingly carved a new beginning for me, one built not on pleading or loss but on calculated resolve and patient precision. And as I stared at the faint reflection of my own hollow eyes in the polished metal of the bed rail, I promised myself that I would not fade quietly into the background of her reinvention, that I would leave with dignity, power, and a story that would outgrow the betrayal that birthed it. For what she had mistaken as weakness was only the calm before a long, deliberate storm that would reshape everything she thought she owned. It had been an unremarkable midweek evening when the world I thought was solid began to crack, the kind of night marked only by familiar scents drifting through the open kitchen windows of our lakeside home, rosemary and citrus rising from the roasting pan, the gentle creak of the floorboards beneath chairs that had known our weight for decades. And there I sat across from my wife of more than 4 decades, a man long retired from designing industrial systems, now content with quiet hobbies and slow mornings, while she, still poised and self-assured, spoke with the practiced grace of someone who had always known how to command attention. And as the sun melted into the water beyond the porch railing, I shared a story of an old colleague who had passed suddenly, remarking on how fragile life seemed when time began to feel shorter, never expecting that she would answer not with comfort but with a sentence so sharp it seemed to tear through the air, telling me with unsettling calm that I could no longer meet her desires, that she had already sought fulfillment elsewhere, and that she felt no regret for doing so. For a heartbeat I believed I had misunderstood her, that perhaps the wine had loosened her tongue into a cruel joke. Yet her eyes held no humor, only detachment, and as she gazed toward the darkening water she spoke again, explaining that youth and energy had become necessities to her, that the men she had chosen made her feel alive in ways she claimed I never could again. And in that silence that followed, heavy and suffocating, my body reacted before my mind could. The metallic clatter of my fork against porcelain echoing louder than the pounding in my ears as the room tilted, and the edges of my vision blurred into shadow, leaving me suspended between disbelief and collapse, a moment that would later replay in fragments every time I tried to understand how a life built on shared years could unravel so completely in a single conversation. When awareness returned, it was to the rhythmic beeping of machines and the faint scent of antiseptic, a nurse standing beside me with a soft voice explaining that my heart had faltered but not failed, that I had been fortunate to arrive in time. And though she spoke of stability and recovery, the only question I asked was whether my wife had come, learning that she had stayed only briefly before leaving with someone younger, departing as though closing a chapter she no longer wished to reread. And in that sterile room, surrounded by wires and quiet footsteps, I felt something shift within me, not sorrow but resolve, because in that loneliness I discovered a calm determination that whispered of plans yet to form, of a future that would no longer bend to accommodate betrayal. Days later, my daughter arrived from across the country, her face lined with worry as she helped me leave the hospital, while the woman who had once promised to stand beside me in sickness was nowhere to be seen. And during the drive back to the house, I stared through the window at familiar streets that now felt foreign, holding back words that burned with unspoken intent. For anger without direction is only noise, and I was shaping mine into something far more deliberate. And when we reached the driveway and found the lights dim and her car gone, I felt the weight of finality settle into my bones as I stepped inside to a home stripped of her presence, her wardrobe emptied, her personal traces erased, leaving only a neatly folded note on the dresser that dismissed our years together as though they were an inconvenience rather than a lifetime. The message was brief and casual, telling me not to dramatize, assuring me I would survive, and claiming she had found someone who made her feel alive, signed with a single initial as though our history were a business transaction concluded without ceremony. Yet what she did not realize was that long ago, when optimism still colored our plans, I had ensured that the foundation of our shared life rested in my name alone, a prenuptial agreement drafted in an era when love felt invincible, containing a clause she had never revisited, granting me full ownership of the home and investments should trust be broken. And as I held that note in my trembling hand, I felt the first hint of control return, the understanding that while she believed she had taken everything, she had instead walked away from it all. The first call I made was to an old friend who had once helped me navigate the legal complexities of building and selling a company, a man whose calm voice on the other end of the line confirmed what I already suspected, that her actions had voided any claim she might have held, that she would leave with nothing but what she could carry. And when he finished explaining, I felt a quiet satisfaction settle into my chest, not the fiery thrill of vengeance but the steady warmth of justice. And from there I moved carefully, hearing an investigator whose sharp eyes and discreet methods would uncover the truth behind the man she had chosen. For I wanted not rumors but facts, not assumptions but evidence, a full picture of the world she had traded hours for. It did not take long for that picture to emerge, revealing a younger man whose online charm masked a trail of broken commitments, financial chaos, and whispered complaints. And as I studied the reports, photographs, and recordings that chronicled their affair, I felt neither rage nor grief, only a growing certainty that every choice they had made would now carry consequences. And when I listened to her voice describing me as predictable and safe, while he spoke of gaining access to my resources, I understood that their bond was not passion but convenience, built on the illusion that what they stole would sustain them, unaware that the ground beneath their fantasy was already beginning to crumble. My response was measured and subtle, beginning with a small gathering of familiar faces who had once admired our marriage, friends and neighbors who believed in the story we had told together. And as they sipped tea beneath the open sky, I shared the truth not through accusation, but through the unfiltered evidence of her own words, allowing the silence that followed to speak for itself, watching as disbelief gave way to uncomfortable clarity. And in that moment, I realized that the most powerful revelations are those that require no embellishment. For when truth stands alone, it reshapes perception without effort, leaving behind a trail of understanding that cannot be undone. From there, I turned to the practical matters that would sever her remaining ties to the life she had abandoned, freezing shared accounts, canceling access to credit, and ensuring that every door she had once opened with ease was now firmly closed. And when she called in fury after a public embarrassment revealed that her privileges were gone, I reminded her that freedom carried a price, ending the conversation before she could reclaim the power she had forfeited. While behind the scenes, I ensured that the man she had chosen would face his own reckoning, sharing his documented history with those who could prevent him from continuing his pattern, dismantling the fragile structure of lies he depended on to survive. As her world shrank, mine began to expand in unexpected ways, filled with quiet mornings, creative pursuits long forgotten, and the steady presence of people who saw me not as a victim but as someone rediscovering himself. And in that space of renewal, I met a woman whose kindness required no performance, whose laughter felt like sunlight after years of shadow. And though the past still lingered at the edges of my thoughts, it no longer defined me. For I had learned that survival is not about clinging to what was lost, but about embracing what remains, shaping a future that honors the strength found in rebuilding rather than the pain left behind. And even as the echoes of my former life faded, carried away by the quiet certainty that I had reclaimed my own narrative, I understood that the greatest transformation was not in what I had taken from those who betrayed me, but in what I had returned to myself, a sense of purpose, peace, and resilience that no one could steal. And as I stood by the water once more, watching the light dance across the surface, I felt gratitude for the storm that had broken me open. For in its aftermath I discovered not ruin but renewal, a life reimagined on my own terms, steady, unburdened, and finally free. The days that followed unfolded with a quiet rhythm that felt unfamiliar yet strangely comforting, as if the world itself had shifted its pace to match the slower, steadier heartbeat I now carried within me. And each morning I rose before dawn to watch the mist hover over the lake like a living veil, reminding me that clarity often arrives only after the fog has lifted. And in those moments of stillness, I reflected not on what I had lost, but on the resilience that had carried me through the collapse of everything I once believed was permanent, realizing that I was no longer defined by the role I had played for decades, but by the choices I was making now to shape a future grounded in honesty, peace, and self-respect. For every quiet cup of coffee and every long walk along the shoreline became a declaration that I was alive not in spite of what happened, but because I had chosen to grow beyond it. As the weeks drifted into one another, news of my former wife reached me only through distant murmurs, whispers carried by acquaintances who spoke with a mixture of pity and disbelief about how quickly her carefully constructed world had dissolved, how the friends who once applauded her elegance now avoided her name, how the organizations she had cherished quietly removed her from their rosters, and how the man she had believed would rescue her from monotony had vanished when resources ran dry, leaving her to confront the reality she had created. And though I felt no satisfaction in her downfall, I recognized it as a natural consequence of choices made without foresight, a reminder that every action sends ripples far beyond the moment in which it is taken. My daughter remained a steady presence through it all, visiting often, sharing stories of her own life, and gently encouraging me to continue exploring the passions I had set aside years earlier. And in her eyes I saw a reflection of pride rather than concern, as though she too recognized the transformation taking place within me. And our bond deepened as we spoke openly about the past, acknowledging its pain without allowing it to overshadow the present, understanding together that healing is not a destination, but a continuous journey that unfolds with patience and grace, shaped by the courage to face uncomfortable truths and the willingness to let them go. In time, the house that once echoed with memories of another life became a sanctuary of creativity and quiet reflection, its walls adorned with photographs and paintings that captured fleeting moments of beauty, each image a testament to the new perspective I had gained. And as I immersed myself in these pursuits, I discovered a renewed sense of purpose that filled the spaces once occupied by doubt and regret, allowing me to express emotions that words could not contain, transforming sorrow into something tangible, something meaningful, something that spoke of resilience rather than despair. The woman who had entered my life during this period of renewal became a companion not only in laughter and conversation, but in shared silences that felt comfortable and sincere. And together we explored simple joys, attending small exhibitions, strolling through quiet towns, and savoring the unspoken understanding that grew between us, a connection rooted not in the need to escape the past, but in the desire to build something genuine in the present, where trust and respect form the foundation of every shared experience. Occasionally, remnants of my former life would resurface, letters left unanswered, messages that carried echoes of regret and longing. Yet I chose not to engage, recognizing that closure does not require dialogue, only acceptance. And with each passing day, the weight of those memories grew lighter, replaced by the certainty that I had chosen a path aligned with my values, one that honored my worth and allowed me to move forward without bitterness, embracing the freedom that comes from releasing what no longer serves you. As seasons changed, bringing with them new colors and gentle transitions, I found solace in the cycles of nature, seeing in them a reflection of my own journey, from the starkness of winter to the promise of spring. And in those transformations, I recognized the beauty of impermanence, understanding that endings are not failures, but necessary beginnings that invite growth, renewal, and the chance to redefine oneself beyond the boundaries of past expectations. The community that once viewed me through the lens of sympathy began to see me as someone who had emerged stronger, and their words of admiration served as gentle affirmations that I had navigated the storm with integrity. Yet the true validation came from within, from the quiet confidence that settled in my heart, a knowing that I had reclaimed my narrative and written a new chapter filled with authenticity, courage, and hope, guided by the lessons learned from both love and loss. There were moments when I reflected on the person I had been before everything changed, recognizing the ways in which I had compromised my own happiness in the pursuit of stability. And while I did not regret the years shared, I acknowledged the necessity of growth that comes from self-awareness, understanding that loving oneself is not selfish, but essential, and that honoring your own needs is the first step toward building relationships that are truly fulfilling and enduring. As I continued to nurture this renewed sense of self, I found joy in mentoring others, sharing my experiences with those who faced similar crossroads, offering reassurance that life's most painful chapters often lead to the most profound transformations. And in those conversations, I witnessed the spark of hope ignite in others, reminding me that our stories, when shared, have the power to inspire resilience, foster connection, and illuminate paths toward healing. And so, as I stand now at the edge of this reimagined life, I do so with gratitude for the journey that has shaped me, for the lessons etched into my heart, and for the quiet strength that carries me forward, knowing that I am no longer bound by the shadows of the past, but guided by the light of possibility, embracing each new day with a sense of purpose and peace that confirms I have not merely survived, but truly begun again.